Welcome to Inside the Chamber. I'm Nikki Anderson, the President and CEO of the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce. Today our show will focus on women in business. Women only hold 10% of board seats on Fortune 500 companies, and only 4.2% of the 500 largest U.S. companies by revenue are women CEOs. We'll be discussing what women are doing not only to get a seat at the table, but to get at the head of the table.
Inside the Chamber is brought to you by presenting sponsor, Naperville Bank and Trust.
So I'm very excited about today's conversation because I don't think it's a conversation that we have enough of, and the three of you I thought would be just perfect to really dig in a little bit deeper to what the difference is with women in leadership, what we bring to the table, why we're not at the table as often as we should be. But what I'd really like to start with is the difference in leadership. I mean, we obviously know that there is a difference between men in leadership and women. This is not a bad thing, it's just different. So if you had to pick like one thing that really stands out to you as far as the difference of a leadership style or management style for women versus men, what do you think it would be?
I think women are more collaborative with their employees, like they get everyone's feedback and they brainstorm a lot together, and women lead by including a lot of people. And I think men, a lot of times, they're just giving orders, and everyone just does what they say, and they don't all come together as often as a women-led group would.
Interesting.
And for me, it's more to communication style. So I have a little bit different because I am in a family business, which, you know, exasperates all that. But as the only female in the partnership role, I found success as a leader being very clear in assigning where the task goes, who's responsible, what the timeline is, and what the expected outcome is. So to be able to communicate that from beginning to end, whether it's my employee or it's my client, everybody kind of has a comfort level in terms of what's expected, and we're much more likely to reach the desired outcome by being so clear up front with expectations.
Awesome.
Agreed. I think the other piece to consider too is I think we're also very intentionally inclusive. So we don't always just surround ourselves with like-minded people within our comfort zone. We're willing to step outside the comfort zone and include other people that don't necessarily think like us, don't necessarily act or look like us, because we know that the ultimate result of that becomes diversity of thought, and hence, you know, for the betterment of moving forward. So I think we're very intentional about including people that are not like us.
One thing that I always hear, or I've heard over the years, is women are just so emotional. I don't think this is number one, I don't think it's a bad thing. And what is emotional, right? I mean, men get angry, right? So when we talk about emotions, is it a bad thing, or what comes to mind when you hear, oh, women are so emotional? Because I'm looking at you going, yeah, that would not be me. But go ahead.
You know, I don't really think, I think that's kind of an antiquated thought process a lot of times, at least within how I operate in the business. I mean, they kind of laugh at work that doesn't really apply. I think the stereotype of, you know, if you're a strong woman and you have a clear vision and you're direct in your speak, you can be assigned a derogatory word that means, whereas if a man acts in the same capacity and has that same strong personality, they are revered for it. Strong leader, you know. So I think that is really comes down to your confidence behind those actions and making sure that although you are direct, you are still respectful in that directness and clear in that directness. And it's really just being confident behind that. But no, the other part really doesn't play into it. I think it's more that stereotype that probably falls into my lap.
Right.
You know, I feel like sometimes the word used to describe a man and a woman in a similar situation is different. So for us, for some reason, it's emotional. I would prefer to call it passionate. We're passionate about what we do. So it's okay to get frustrated. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to be happy and sad. when you're at work, and because you're very passionate and you care. But for a woman, it's considered emotional.
And we're able to
Whereas-
articulate it better, right? Like we have an ability to express our frustration, I would say, clearer, whereas a guy might not.
Right.
As far as emotional, I think women are more relationship oriented, even at work. They're more concerned about the relationship with their coworkers, where a lot of times I don't think, you know, men really consider that. I mean, they go and they do their team building and things like that, but I think women focus on relationships and the emotional part of working with people.
I've also read, you know, we're better communicators. To your point, you know, how you explain things from start to finish to be very concise and very clear and to deliver that with confidence. I think I see that in the workplace very, very often, that we just tend to be better communicators and maybe pick up on things a little bit more than men do. And I don't know if you see that in the workplace.
Definitely better listeners.
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting because my son is like the next generation of business owners, and he's my son. He's a male, and he took paternity leave.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to hear about that. When I called him and he said, you know, this is Alex Anderson and I'm on paternity leave, I'll be back such and such a date. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so progressive. But it's interesting that men are taking paternity leave, but for women, our maternity leave is still like, we have this need, we got to hurry up and get back because we don't want to miss a step, because you snooze, you lose kind of mentality. And is that really fair? And what are the divisions that we see that make that a little bit different for men and women?
Well, I think obviously the hard part is the years that we're growing our family are years that we're generally taking a step back within our career. And it was, to your point, when I had my first child, it was how quick can I get back in the office because I need to be there or I'm going to lose my clients, I'm going to lose my foothold within the business. And with each subsequent child, it, you know, does take a significant time to ramp back up your business. So as a man's able to just continue to move up, I feel like we take a couple steps, go back, take a couple steps, go back. And until we can really have a social norm surrounding the support of maternity leave and also a structure in place that supports it better, we're going to not maintain and retain these top talent of women that really have spent their, you know, early 20s and early 30s building up a career, and then a lot of them can't find a way to stay or get back into the workforce. And it's really unfortunate that, you know, it is really socially unacceptable to have a family at the top level. It really is. I find myself, you know, being in meetings when I'm picking up a kid early or something, and it's kind of sad that we don't have that support more vocal within our society.
Interesting. What are some of the fears that you think women have as they seek to find more leadership roles? What do you think some of the things are that hold them back?
So I think that capitalizes right on the conversation we were just having, which is family. I think sometimes we are put in a position where we have to make choices, and those choices, we are afraid of the ramifications of the choices, right? So if you choose to decide that, you know what, this is not the right time for me to advance my career, and so we stay because it's the best thing to do for our family at the time, then what stigma does that place on us in the workplace, and does it take away future opportunity and future advancement later on when you are ready now to make that decision and take on those additional responsibilities? So I think sometimes the family perspective and the choices that you make there do put a fear, sadly, in the mind of women as they're contemplating the direction of their career.
Interesting.
Yeah. For me, I had my son, and I was lucky enough to stay home with him when he turned 3. So I had about a 12-year maternity leave. But I tell my friends, as they were having children, keep one foot in the door. Like, don't just stop and don't do nothing. So keep a foot in the door, do something part-time. So luckily, when I did go back into the workforce, I decided I just wanted to do my own thing instead of try to go back to where I was 12 years ago, because I thought that's going to be impossible. So to your point, it is difficult for women, and there is that fear that I can't go back to what I was doing before.
Right.
And I think some of it comes to, hey, do I want to focus on shaping my child's life or growing my business? I mean, that's horrible. Like,
Yeah.
that's literally a
Those are the
daily
choices, right? Yeah.
discussion
Yeah.
in my head. But at the same time, I was lucky to work, obviously, in a family company. I mean, I took my daughter, my third one now, in a pack and play to my office until she was 7 months old. And I was able to have that support and be in there and try to transition. But at the same time, climbing that ladder, you mentally cannot split that way.
Yeah.
During your day. So it's a challenge, but to find a environment that supports the family, I think is huge.
Well, and I had such an interesting conversation with a woman business owner yesterday. And I said, talk to me a little bit about work-life balance. And she said, it doesn't exist. And she said, and you're setting a bar that's unrealistic. We call it integration. And I was like, that's brilliant, because just exactly what you were saying, you were integrating that work life and personal life to make it work for everybody, right? You're still there with the kids. Now, you're in more of a corporate environment, so you probably couldn't bring a pack and play.
They didn't let you bring your 7-month-old? Yeah.
But I love the idea, though, of integration, because that's reality. That really is. And if you can figure out how to integrate those pieces of your life or weave them together in such a way that it keeps you sane, that's a great thing. I often hear about women being amazing multitaskers. Do you think that's just a label, or do you think it's true?
Definitely true. You have to be.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think men struggle to do more than one thing at a time, whereas I say sometimes we're juggling 3 and 4 things simultaneously. I think it's absolutely true.
I think I've heard it described as women have, 30 to 40 browsers open in their brain at all times while the man has clicked on one. And, they say, well, if you're multitasking, you're never actually really handling anything in the right capacity. It's called survival, and yes, you do. You just get it done. I don't think there's any well, I didn't. No, you did, and you get it done, and you figure it out.
Right. So we've been hearing a lot of getting a seat at the table, and we're still struggling with that. What do you think is kind of that obstacle preventing more than, I think I had 4% of women sit on boards across the country, and only of 500 Fortune companies, I think it's like less than 4% that are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So what do you think that women need to do differently to have a seat at that table and potentially have the head seat at the table?
I think the culture of women as a whole is to be very, again, thoughtful of others and inclusive of others and thinking of others first. So is my team okay? Is my organization okay? Is everything working appropriately? Then the last person they think about is themselves. And if we want a seat at the table, we have to get comfortable with being vocal. We have to get comfortable with talking about ourselves, what we do well, what we want, the help that we need to get there, and where we think we can add value to the organization or whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. And until we get vocal and understand that there is a me in team, then we're going to continuously, sadly, get overlooked because we're not as vocal as the other people around us saying, I want that, I want to get there.
We're going to discuss why we're not being more vocal when we come back.
Naperville Bank and Trust has the expertise, knowledge, and experience to help you reach your business goals.
We would prefer to work with somebody like Naperville Bank and Trust. They're engaged in the community, they're able to help meet our financial needs, they understand us as a business.
They provide all the tools that you would ask that we as a growing business need of a bank. Most importantly, to me, it's a great personal relationship we have with Tom and John and our bankers.
It was the best thing we could have done in banking. Banking can be very cold. What the bank brings to us is that warm feeling when you come into the bank and people say, "Hi, Greg."
It's about being part of the community again, about being a name again, about having credit for who your business is instead of just being a number.
Naperville Bank and Trust. Bring it home.
So we're discussing about women having a seat at the table and why more women aren't getting a seat at the table, especially the head of the table. And Brianna, you talked about, women need to be better advocates for themselves.
Absolutely.
Is that kind of...
Absolutely. We're such good advocates for other people. We stand up and say what other people need, and we advocate for their careers and the future and their skills and what they need and how to help and develop them. And sometimes we don't sit back and say what we need and what I want and where I want to go in my career, so that other people can help us do that as well.
Great.
And you need to. It's incredibly important, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Right.
And we forget about that sometimes.
Yeah.
I completely agree. You need to speak up for yourself. I'm in a business where there's 130 other business owners doing the same thing I do, but we also have a corporate office and franchise council, and you got to speak up and say, hey, I want to be part of that. I want to be on the team. I want to be on the council. I want to help other owners of these businesses, advocate for them, and just be there for other people that are doing, in my position, the same types of thing I'm doing every day, and just let it be known that you're there to help people and be their advocate.
But also you're your best advocate.
Right. You have to speak up for yourself and say you want to help, you want to be there, and get out there and talk about your business and be in front of people all the time.
And so that advocacy, I used to see it all the time when I talked to women that own their business, and they didn't want to charge as much, and they were in an industry where men were charging 50% more. And it wasn't because they were better, it's just because they this is what I'm worth and this is what I'm going to charge, and never thought twice about it. And I see this with women, just kind of that lack of confidence, and I think that comes from maybe having role models or mentors. Do you think that maybe we need more of those? And how? Because I'll give you an example. Everybody talked about the Sheryl Sandberg book, Lean In, and good nuggets were in there, but this was a very privileged woman, right? From the get-go, has a lot of money, had a nanny, so many, and I'll speak for myself, I didn't have that luxury when I worked, right? So reading it, it's like, okay, well, that works for you. Again, there were nuggets in there that were inspiring to me, but do you think we have role models that we're not paying attention to, or do you guys have your own mentors or role models?
Back to kind of the question you had thrown out of why we don't have a seat at the table, I think a lot of it is that gender equality has really only come to the forefront in the last 3 to 4 decades. And I would have liked to have seen those numbers before then, because I'm sure they did not exist. And so what we really need to be able to do is have more women in these high-powered positions and more seats at the table to be able to show how you get to that path of success. Right now, it seems like kind of an untouchable one-off anomaly. And I think it starts at home. Because personally, my 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, see me every day as a leader within my company and within the community. So to be able to see that as the norm makes it not a question of if, but when.
Right.
And I think that's what we have to strive to bring more attention to.
Yeah, and it's so different for you guys versus when I was growing up. It was talk about gender equality. I don't even think I ever heard of the term until 10 years ago. What? We're supposed to be the same?
I get paid more for this? No, really.
So I don't think that discussion has really been out there for probably 10 years. Like I said, that term, now we're talking about it and really looking at salaries and the disparity between salaries. We're seeing it in Hollywood, right? A guy signs on for $34 million and they paid her $1,500. But then I'm going to go back to what you said, Brianna, and that is we have to be, we have to be our own advocate. We have to be the one out there. What do you think is maybe a fear, aside from, maybe not being our own best advocate, but what do you think women really need to take a look at to embrace, to kind of get to that next level and not to be that anomaly?
One of the biggest things I think women do is we're very critical of ourselves sometimes. And if there's 10 things required for an opportunity, we want to be able to check all 10 boxes. Whereas our male counterpart says, I got 2, I'm going for this. And so we need to take an opportunity to not necessarily you want to always grow your skill set. You want to always take a look at where you are and what you need and how you can improve. But don't be so critical of ourselves, and understand that there's value here, there's skills here, and be vocal about how you can use those skills for the opportunity that that you're looking for. And you know, our male counterparts are just not that way. They're not critical of themselves. They put themselves on pedestals and say, I've got this, I'm going to go for it. And you know, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I'll just try again. And we're not those risk takers either.
Right. That to me is risk takers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think we want to stay within our box a lot of times, and to take that risk or to fail seems to be a lot harder to swallow as a woman than it is for a man. It's almost like, well, if I fail there, they're going to think I'm going to fail across the board. Instead of saying, you know, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to try my best. And okay, this didn't happen, but because of that failure, I was able to do X, Y, and Z. Or they saw me put myself out there, take the initiative and go for it, and was rewarded by the confidence that I'm looking to be, you know, cutting edge or find the next best thing. And it's all not going to work, but we got to try it.
Right. I say you follow your passion and it'll happen. And I took a huge risk and was very passionate about it and just didn't stop and just kept going and kept going. You just got to advocate for yourself and just don't look back and just...
And, you know, quite frankly, the fact that we don't take risks is so counterintuitive to who we are as women and what we're capable of. Because when we do take the risk is so calculated, and we have such drive. We have such drive and such passion. We're able to multitask. We're able to organize. Like, we have all the skill sets that can support the taking of the risk to make it that much more successful.
So do you think that there's a void of women supporting women?
I do not. I don't.
And do you think it's because you surround yourself with those women that are an advocate for you, and it goes both ways?
Strong female friendships and a lot of support from friends and family, and you can do anything.
You know, I agree with you. I think there was a time where there was this perception that women hold women back. I feel we've come past that. And I feel like we truly are here to promote women and to help women find that voice and find those opportunities. You know, there's all sorts of different organizations now that I'm sure we're all a part of, and I'm sure we all have a mentee that we're sponsoring to develop, and we are so passionate about that. We're so good at it. I think we've found a place to be able to do that in a very positive way to encourage women. So I think I agree with you. I think we've come past that stereotype.
Yeah, because there was a time where it's like, whoa, catfight, right? You know, and jealousy. But I think I have to agree with you. I don't see it nearly as much as I did when I was, 20 years ago in business. I think it's less, and maybe it's because it's the next generation of women that are coming in that are all about that kind of support. But I also think, to your point, it's surround yourself with those people that really care about you.
Right.
Because you're going to have a naysayer at some point, right? And that's just the way that it's going to go. But just continue to move forward. Let's talk about the next generation of women, and I would say like your kids, right? My grandkids, and talk about what might their future look like. What do you think will be different, and what do we have to do to help set that groundwork for them?
Well, I think it's kind of what we touched upon a little bit earlier, is being the role model within the home. But I think it even comes to things, and I remember very specifically, my daughter's first grade teacher reached out to me and said, look, your daughter is excelling at math and science, and you have to find any way to support that, because we see a huge decline in the school system between second and third grade in terms of the passion and desire for girls towards math and science. So it was amazing, and this was a male teacher, by the way, which I thought was kind of cool, that he stepped out to bring that to our attention. So in our house, we don't talk about being like a lawyer or a doctor, no offense, but we talk about being an engineer. My husband and I both went to Purdue, go Boilers. So we always are like, create what you want, and we quiz her on math and we talk about science. And I think it's really kind of trying to open up and expose to more industries outside of your traditional, do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a lawyer? Do you want to be a teacher? The things that are just very commonplace, and really try to promote, STEAM within the household and math and science and so forth.
So my daughter's 2.5. So we're not at the stage
No
of being in
calculus
school
yet?
and
No.
talking about math. One of the things that's very important to me, though, is that she lives in a very boisterous household. We're all very loud and we all have opinions. And it's very important to me to make sure that she has one as well. So we constantly engage her and ask her her thoughts and her opinions. And so, yeah, believe it or not, she's 2.5. She's very vocal. She has them. And so when asked, she will respond and she will provide those and she'll talk to us about it. And we have to be very conscious, though, because the flip side is she is very gentle and soft. And so if you don't pull that out of her, she'll sit and listen. So we have to be very conscious. And this is, I think, just goes, to our inclusive nature, translate that to the boardroom, right? So are we sitting there, and we ask the quiet folks at the table, we'll ask them and point to them and say, what's your thoughts? What's your opinions? And I think we have to do that, in order to get our girls comfortable with speaking about themselves and being advocates for themselves and having an opinion and being willing to share it. We have to encourage them and let them know that that's okay, starting at home.
Agreed. So I could talk for at least another hour, but I'd like to wrap up with a question for each of you, and that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to a high school student, a young woman in high school that's trying to figure out, what's out there for me, what are my opportunities, what might you tell them?
I would suggest they figure out what their passion is, what they're most passionate about, and do something in that career path.
I think for me, I started working at a very young age, and only because this is going to sound great, I liked money, right? So I wanted to shop at Express, which was more expensive than my parents' J.C. Penney budget. So I got a job with the parameters from my parents that if I dropped off the high honor roll, I would be out of sports and a job. So at a very young age, I started working. And I think what that did for me is it taught me responsibility, and it taught me what I liked and didn't like about working in an hourly job and working in here. I think it's hard sometimes when you're that young to know really how your passion translates into a career. So I think just even getting into the workforce teaches you so much of a skill set of how to take the initiative in that role, no matter what is defined, to show that you are competent and trustworthy, and see how you can promote yourself, instead of waiting for someone else to hand it to you. Figure out what it is that can make that job more specific to you and elevate your game.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say one thing that I think every young woman should know is that the world is your oyster at this point, and you have a choice. You have a choice, and so it's your responsibility to expose yourself to so many different things, different careers, different options, different passions, different skills, and then choose which one is best for you. Don't let a society direct that, and don't let a person direct that for you. You have a choice. Go expose yourself to what it is you want to do, choose it, and then chase it.
All right, finally, one word that describes you that has helped you be successful. One word. What do you think it is?
Fearless.
Tenacity.
Vocal.
And to me, those are the things that we're lucky to have you in this community, and to be the leaders and to be the role models for the high schoolers and even college students that are coming up. And we might not know what we want to do at that young age, but when we have people like you in the community that are talking about opportunities are endless, have a voice, take a risk, it's a pretty exciting future for the women coming up. Thank you for joining us for Inside the Chamber. We hope you found the information in today's program valuable. Please join us again for our monthly programs. In the meantime, remember, when you're looking to shop or dine, think Chamber, and visit naperville.net to support the Chamber of Commerce and our business community.